panel. It's going to be a really, really interesting panel. And we will have some time for questions and answers at the end. So welcome. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Nuzhat Jaffrey. I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Council of Muslim Women. And the issue of Muslim women's employment is not new to CCMW. We've been following this issue for 20 years now. In fact, we undertook a study 20 years ago, and it was entitled Canadian Muslim Women um, over Overqualified and Underemployed. Um, and that's why we named this study that we're going to talk about today as Canadian Muslim women still overqualified and underemployed. So the thesis is that not much has changed, but circumstances have changed, the populations have changed, and we'll learn more about that from our panelists and some of the study findings that you'll hear about. So welcome to all of you. And we will get started. We start usually with a land acknowledgement. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the peoples of Turtle Island. The sacred land on which I'm at today um, has been a site of human activity for 15,000 years. I know many of you are joining us from different parts of this country, so you can take a moment to think about which land you're on and who it belongs to. We acknowledge the land that we're meeting at here today. Some of our team is on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered, or Takaranto is covered by Treaty 13 of the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, the meeting place of Takaranto is still the home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. As Canadian Muslim women, we recognize the connection between anti-Indigenous racism and Islamophobia, and we're committed to working toward justice for Indigenous women and girls in Canada. I would like to share with you that Indigenous women, compared to all other women in Canada, are at the biggest disadvantage in employment. In fact, they're more disadvantaged than Canadian Muslim women. In fact, Canadian Muslim women are at the very bottom as well. But in fact, unfortunately, Indigenous women are faring even worse in the labor market and on the job. So we have to keep in mind that there's this sisterhood that we have. And we need to remember that, we are settlers on this land and we are occupying a land that has been given to us to work on, to play on, to study on. And if it weren't for the generosity of the Indigenous peoples of this country, we would not be able to do what we're doing today, talk about barriers to employment for Canadian Muslim women. So let's keep Indigenous women in mind because they're suffering and their experiences are instructive for us. And always remember that we are stewards of this gift that we've been given on this land. Thank you. Next slide, please. So I'm going to, before I tell you our agenda, I'd like to acknowledge a few people without whom this whole program would not be possible or our project wouldn't be possible. I'd like to thank Firdaus Ali, who's our project manager for this project, and Iman Ahmed Noor, whom you're going to hear from later on. In fact, Firdaus is a panelist, and Iman is going to give you some information about this work. Zulekha Hirsi, she's been working behind the scenes. She will be moderating our Q&A at the end. Two people who are not with us because of other commitments are Amal Masri, who's done a great deal of work with us already, and she's going to be developing very exciting materials and resources to address the barriers that we will discuss today. And of course, the author of our Aspire study, Dr. Sarah Shah. Sarah has moved to the US to be a professor down there, but without her, we would not have this amazing study that we're going to to be discussing, and which is the basis for this panel. And we're going to be drawing a lot of parallels from Sarah's findings to the experiences of our panelists today. What we're going to do is give you an overview of the Aspire study, and then there will be a panel discussion followed by the audience Q&A. What we would like you to do is put your questions in the chat once we begin the Q&A section. Do not pose your questions before that, just because we won't be able to monitor them. But in the meantime, if you wish to comment on anything you're hearing, feel free to use the chat box to do so. So hold your questions and put them in the chat box once the panel has completed the discussion. So now I'd like to pass it on to the intrepid Iman Noor. Over to you, Iman.
Thank you so much, Nishat, and hello, everyone. Before we talk a little bit about the study, I just wanted to give an overview of the Aspire project. So the project is titled Addressing Barriers to Employment for Muslim Women. And it's a 3-year project funded by the Department of Women and Gender Equality, which aims to better understand the multiple barriers that Canadian Muslim women face in accessing and sustaining employment, as well as advancing their careers. And so, along with the study, the project goals include developing toolkits with strategies for employers and Muslim women, to hold an employment conference to launch the toolkits, and feature workshops to apply strategies and tools included in the toolkits, and to influence public policy to address employment barriers faced by Muslim women. Next slide. So now a little bit about the study. So as Nushat mentioned, in 2004, Dawood Hamdani and CCMW came together to create a study that found that Canadian Muslim women were overqualified yet underemployed at higher rates than the general population. And so now, 20 years later, our Aspire study, titled Still Overqualified and Underemployed, Canadian Muslim Women's Experiences of Employment Barriers and Facilitators, which was launched in June of this year, reveals that these employment disparities persist. The study explores stories of diverse Canadian Muslim women's challenges and pathways to employment success, and it aims to support more diverse, equitable, and inclusive Canadian workplace environments. It also helps us understand the challenges in recruiting, retaining, and promoting Canadian Muslim women. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about the findings of the study. They indicate that Canadian Muslim women remain under and unemployed at significantly higher rates than the general Canadian population. Canadian Muslim women are less likely to report being employed, working full-time, and holding senior or middle management positions compared with the general Canadian population. And Muslim women are more likely to report working part-time and being unemployed while looking for work. And so if you haven't had a chance to review the study, you can find more information online at ccmw.com/aspire-study. And I'll also put it in the chat as well. We have the report in English and French, as well as executive summaries in English and French, as well as various infographics and fact sheets that you can review. Next slide, please. So for today, our goal with the panel is to hear from Muslim women about their lived employment experiences as they align with the Aspire study. Our panelists all come from different backgrounds and will discuss what it's like to be a Muslim woman in the Canadian workforce today. And as mentioned earlier by Nissa, we also want you to share your lived experiences with us after our panel discussion. And any questions or comments you may have can be put in the chat box during our discussion period after the panel. Next slide. All right, so before we begin with our panel, I would like to introduce our moderator, Zahra Grant. Zahra Grant is a deeply committed activist and governance professional with a keen interest in building safe and inclusive communities across differences, facilitating conversations that build mutual understanding, and enabling responsible decision-making that fosters justice and liberation. A CCMW National Board member, Zahra has also collaborated on initiatives with various organizations, such as Black Canadian Muslims and the Women's Mosque. Over to you, Zahra.
Thank you so much, Iman. And as stated in my bio, it's always such an honor to be part of these conversations and hold spaces like this that are so important. And we really hope that all the attendees today, gain some insights, valuable insights, gain community, and also look to be continue to be engaged in this project as we move forward with the conference and the toolkits that will inshallah come out. But this is a very first conversation, and I'm more than delighted to introduce our panelists. We have first Asma Hassan. Asma is a partner at KPMG in Canada's Intelligent Delivery and Innovation Tax Practice. Asma provides services to a wide array of companies in the technology and telecommunication industries, and also leads tax provision audits for many private and large public companies. Asma leads the Toronto team of KPMG's Intelligent Delivery and Innovation Tax Group, combining tax technical expertise, technology, and data analytics to drive more value out of recurring tax engagements for her clients. So welcome, Asma, and thank you for being with us today. We also have Firdaus Ali, who was a huge part of this project as well in getting this done. But Firdaus is also an active voice in diversity and inclusion and has led several health and gender equity initiatives for national and provincial organizations, including Heart and Stroke Foundation, Alliance for South Asians, AIDS Prevention, Osteoporosis Canada, amongst many more. Firdaus has worked as a journalist in Mumbai, India, and is currently employed by the Canadian Council of Muslim Women as project manager leading the Aspire project aimed at addressing employment barriers for Canadian Muslim women. You may also recall a DARE project that we had as well, and she was instrumental in that as well. So just wanted to add that. Firdaus believes in blending creative programming and media awareness to open dialogues on important issues like racism, feminism, and gender-based violence. A proud Gandhian, Firdaus lives the philosophy, you must be the change you want to see in the world. So welcome, Firdaus, and thank you so much for being with us today. And we also have Nobahar Hasnain. Nobahar is a second-generation Pakistani Canadian living in Victoria, BC, on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen peoples. She holds a Bachelor of Business Administration from the University of New Brunswick and works as an account executive at Commonwealth Retirement, a fintech company providing group retirement plans to businesses. A graduate of the Jump the Rung Career Accelerator, Nobahar is passionate about empowering racialized women to advance their careers. In her spare time, you could find her working on new recipes on her blog. Please share that with us later. Hitting the pavement on a run, or getting crafty with her latest sewing project. So welcome, Nobahar, and thank you for being with us today. And last but not least, we have Rubina Duarte. Rubina leads Cultural Paradigm as a CEO and founder after serving as a senior executive for over 25 years across industries. She realized going out on her own would allow her to leverage this expertise to make wider impact across companies and communities. Her most recent role was head of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Procure Technologies. Rubina has also held roles as Vice President of DEI at the Walt Disney Company and at Manulife, HP, and Dell. Her passion for supporting communities include working with NGOs in rural South Africa, focused on helping women who were survivors of rape and domestic violence. While based in Toronto, Canada, she has lived or has worked across the Middle East, Africa, North America, Europe, and Asia. She also serves on the board of Build a Dream, whose mission is to support young women in exploring career opportunities in skilled trades and STEAM. So welcome to our esteemed panelists. Thank you all so much for being part of this today. So we just want to get to know our panelists a little bit more. So we're just going to do some quick rapid fire questions to get to know them. So I would like to ask Asma real quick, what was the first job you ever had and what did you learn from it?
Sure, Zara. I just like to say assalamualaikum and hello to everyone, and thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for the organizers. I'm honored to be part of this panel. With regard to the quickfire questions, so my first job ever was being a porter at my residence building at York University, where I did my undergraduate. So those are not familiar with what a porter is, a porter's job is basically to sign visitors into the building. And I was an introvert and very shy when I was young, and I still think I am. So talking to all these people was definitely something out of my comfort zone. What I learned from that job was that we grow as individuals when we push ourselves out of our comfort zone, and I wound up making some amazing friends and connections through my first job.
Thank you so much, Asma. And for those, we've learned quite a bit about you being with CCMW and from the bio, but what is something that we don't know about you that wasn't listed in your professional bio?
Thank you, Zara. And again, thank you for having me. And I feel so much at home being part of CCMW. So something that I think a lot of you don't know about me, that as a young 20-year-old mother of two kids, I was a journalist in Bombay. Politically, it's still Bombay for us, not Mumbai. And I dressed as a man. So, we were doing a story on gender diversity and what it is like to kind of come out of your, comfort zone and be in someone else's shoes. So no female journalist was willing to take the challenge. And of course, I kind of put my hand up and I said, okay, let me do it. So I walked the streets of Bombay. I went into the trains where men go. I went into men's washrooms. I went into spaces really that, men were there and many women would not dare to go. But it was such a unique experience. It got written about. So I'm really proud that I think I'm maybe the first or among the few female journalists that has ventured to do that.
Brave, I love that. And Nobohar, what is one unique thing in your experience that has benefited, you think, in your career that might be a little off the cuff?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, CCMW, for hosting this great event. I apologize, I am feeling a little bit under the weather, so please bear with me. You'll see me with my giant mug of tea as we progress with the panel. I don't know how unique it is, but one thing that I've really gotten into over the past few years is running. So I've ran 3 half marathons over the past few years, including the most recent one in October here in Victoria. Staying active through running has been a game changer for my energy and mental health, which directly helps me show up stronger and more focused at work. And I like to tell myself, if I can make it through running 21 kilometers, I can make it through a long, boring meeting. So there's that too. But basically just staying active, moving your body, I feel like that's a very underrated thing that can help all aspects of your life, including your career.
It's true. It's really about connecting the two experiences. Mental health is so important, and finding ways where that you can channel that energy will definitely benefit your professional career. So thank you for sharing that. I love that. And Rubina, we're in an interview panel today, but what is one question over the course of your career that you have been asked that you thought was really, really interesting and is really insightful that you could share with us today?
Yeah, it's interesting because I had to think about what this would be having I age myself. It's been many years of interviews, but one that's really simple but intrigued me the first time I was asked it was about my passion. So what is my passion and what kind of gets me going? And I remember the person who asked it to me, it took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it and took a moment to think about it. The answer I gave was just kind of ongoing learning. So I'm one of those individuals. I'm always enrolled and doing some type of program in something. It doesn't have to be related to DI. It can be like something completely different. Sometimes it's like be interesting to read your blog, Nubahar, because it could be a cooking class. Right now, I'm actually enrolled in photography, and to be honest, I'm just trying to figure out how to use the camera, which with technology is so complicated. But yeah, for me, it's just I'm really passionate about learning, so always doing that.
I love it. Learning is an ongoing journey for sure. And I think tying into that is why we're all here today. I think we're all here today to get some insight on the topic and learn. So I'm curious for each of you, if you don't mind asking, taking a minute or two, why was it important for you to participate in this panel today? Maybe I will start with you, Firdaus.
Yes, thank you, Zara. I think that's such an important question. And, I have 2 hats that I'm wearing today, being part of the project and the study, but also a panelist. But I just felt that, as Sarah unfolded the study, every line that I read kind of resonated with me. And I'm like, oh my God, that's me. And, that's me here. And I feel that, in the 30 years that I have worked in Canada in different fields, national organizations, health charities, I kind of had to take a step back and say, oh my God, am I really in the first world? Because, I had such unique experiences. Today, we have fancy names for them like the glass cliff phenomena and racial reflexivity, etc. But at that time, we didn't know that there were names for these things. And really, I have, as a racialized woman, many Muslims are racialized, but the stuff that we go through, the compromises that we make, credentials credentials are not recognized. So as a journalist from Bombay, I had to kind of give tests to make people believe that I could speak and write English. I had interview questions, which were appalling. Like I had to walk out of some interviews that, like, how dare you ask me that? And then finally we had to settle and, take the jobs because we have families, we come with so many burdens and complexities. So I think that, today's panel was so important for me to talk about so many intersections that we as women live with. I battle ageism every day. Everywhere I go, I have to. I sometimes say, I don't want to color my hair. I want you to recognize me for who I am. I fight ableism. I fight, that I'm juggling a family, a demanding family. I'm also part of, or was part of, a sandwich generation where I was looking after my mom and my kids. So I think that, our workplaces are really not ready for us. I think, the way that these are, I think that organizations, especially national organizations, they do so much to make you fail and so little to make you succeed that it kind of, we really need to come together to form these allyships. And I wanted to write a book actually to say, I had better experiences in India, which is now, or has been called as a third world, and it's still a developing nation. And I had better work experiences there than I did here. So I think that being part of this panel is really to open the dialogue and to tell women who are battling many things, right from racial hierarchy, or who are working for managers who may be white and may not be understanding the cultural complexities that come with being, a Muslim woman, being someone who's almost 60 years old. I want you to come and say, that it's not you. Don't blame yourself. These systems are kept there. They are meant to make you fail. But I think that you need to rise above that. You need to kind of find that belief in yourself to say, we can make it happen. There are so many things we can do together and band and bond together to make a success of ourselves. So I think that in short, my answer is, I'm part of all those profiles that Sarah Shah had given us. Amna was one, which is also my mother's name, but she was, an aging immigrant woman living in poverty. Her credentials were not recognized. There was another one, Tanzul. I think she was juggling careers and a demanding family. So I kind of am all of that. And I want to say that, we women are so strong. We want people to believe in us, but we need to believe in ourselves first. And until that happens, the success won't come. So thank you for that
Thank you
question.
so much. Yeah, thank you so much for those. And I think what I'm taking away from that too is also the way you saw yourself in the study. Inshallah, even everybody participating today can see themselves in our panelists, right? And no, because I know when you're going through these things in the workplace, it's very isolating, it's very lonely. So we hope that sessions like today and what we continue to do with this study is an opportunity to, yeah, lean on each other, know that you do have a sense of community, know that there is possibility and that we can nurture each other and be in community in that way to ensure more success for each other, inshallah. I'm going to ask the same question of Nobahar. Why was it important to you to participate in the panel today?
Yeah. In similar kind of theme to Firdaus, one of the most interesting findings from the study was how many Canadian Muslim women internalize under or unemployment as a personal failing. And that really struck me because we know that these challenges are not personal failings. They are often rooted in systemic issues. I think it's important for us to come together and start to make that shift in mindset, because it's only when we start to recognize these things as systemic that we can arm ourselves with kind of practical tools and strategies to move forward, as opposed to continuing to see it as a personal failing and continuing to beat ourselves up when we're not the ones who are the issue, right? I think it's very important to build that solidarity. So that's, again, why I'm here today. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Zara. Like, it's very rare to be in spaces where you identify with people in the room, especially a lot of us coming from corporate backgrounds here in Canada. So it's really empowering to be amongst a group of panelists and attendees where we all can kind of see some similarities in each other's and experiences and backgrounds.
Thank you so much. And all right, Rabina, what about you? Why was it important for you to share with us today and participate?
Yeah, and I guess and I should have said this when you asked the first kind of question. I think it's a big thank you. I think to the CCMW for first of all having this conversation, which is just really important. More and more I'm hearing from women when I go to events, and now I've recently started wearing the hijab, and that's my own journey, talking and coming up and saying, we see you as a Muslim woman and talk to us about your experience. But for me, being part of this panel, what I would say is, when I started my career in corporate America, probably 25 years ago, very soon after that, I was working for a multinational, a US multinational, but I was in South Africa. 9/11 happened, but I was traveling to the US often, and being young, being Muslim, I found myself covering a lot, right? So covering in terms of just hiding who I was, not really feeling having the courage, right, to be vocal about being a Muslim or what was happening in the world. And I think over time, that that's significantly changed. And so when I was approached about the panel, what interested me was being able to speak now about the journey, about the experiences of, where we were, and I think how things are at the moment. Yes, everything's not perfect, but there are pieces of where we are in the corporate world that we can actually pause and say, okay, there are many challenges, but there are ways for us to navigate them. And if I can share some wisdom to women on the call around how to navigate that in the current environment, then that's what I'm here for, is to share that.
Thank you so much. I love that. And last but definitely not least, Asma, why was it important for you to join us on the panel today?
Thank you, Zara. And I just wanted to say everything that each of the panelists said really resonated with me personally. And so thank you so much for sharing those experiences. So for me, it was important to participate in this panel today because throughout my long career in public accounting, I did not see any visible Muslim women in leadership positions. And that always gave me the impression like someone like myself, a Muslim woman who wear the hijab, could never really be a partner at a public accounting firm. There were just too many barriers, and I therefore personally never aspired to be in a leadership position. However, times have changed now, and there are so many Muslim women partners at public accounting firms, including myself. And I really feel that representation at the leadership level matters to our future generations of Muslim women in the workforce. When you see someone like yourself in a leadership position, you will tell yourself that yes, that can be me one day as well. And for this reason, I'd like to highlight that I also co chair a few people networks or employee resource groups at my firm, one of which is the Salam Network, which is a faith based Muslim network. And it's been a pivotal part of my career journey and getting me to leadership. Our network has been in existence for over 15 years. We were a very small network when we started. It was really just to connect Muslim employees, but we've evolved over the years and are now over 500 members strong. And what I'd like everyone to take away from that is that employee resource groups or people networks really are there to allow you to bring your whole selves to work, to promote inclusivity. And really, the Muslim network at my organization, we really focused on highlighting to our future generations that they can be Muslim leaders one day. We have Muslim mentorship programs, and we showcase successful Muslim leaders at the firm. And really, for me personally, co-chairing such a network was important because I want to empower future generation of Muslim women that they can bring them whole selves to work. They can be Muslim women who wear the hijab or who don't wear the hijab, but can be successful leaders in their own right. And I'd also like to highlight that a very important aspect of leading a Muslim network is that it has personally empowered me to use my voice, to speak up for issues that are important to our community. The pain and suffering we've seen in Palestine and in Lebanon and in Sudan and around the world, and around the Muslim world, has weighed heavily on our hearts. So it's really in times like these that it's important for us to use our voices, not just for ourselves, but for those who remain unseen and unheard. So by being on this panel today, I really want to send the message to Muslim women that each and every one of you will face your own unique sets of challenges and barriers in your respective personal and professional lives. But through your faith, your hard work, and your perseverance, you will one day be the leaders you are destined to be. And I'd also like to encourage everyone to take the effort in participating in people networks, because I think it is through such people networks at our organization that we can create spaces for more voices, more dreams, and more leadership from people like us.
Thank you, Asma. I think you raised such an important point. about navigating. Let's make sure we get the connection for people to join that network if possible, because it is really important to be part of safe spaces. You know, we recognize, like Nobahar said, that a lot of the challenges we face are systemic. So it is very hard. It can feel like a personal failure, but also, like Rubina said, it also forces us to sometimes not show up as our full selves at work, right? Which can also affect our mental health. So having resources and spaces like you speak of to where you can show up fully, you can talk about the challenges you have. I think it's so important to this process of also challenging the status quo of the corporate world, right? And building those spaces of inclusivity. So thank you for that. Okay, so I'm going to get into some direct questions. First, I'm going to start with you, Firdaus, because you did bring up the concept of the glass cliff phenomenon that a lot of racialized women experience in the workplace. And, you know, the Aspire study also speaks to that. Can you just elaborate on what this looks like and what you mean by that and how we could counter it?
Yes, thank you, Zara. I think that is really, the Aspire study has so many important sections, but I think the glass cliff phenomena is something that resonated with me. And anybody who's not familiar with the term, I just want to mention that it refers to the tendency of, especially women who come from marginalized groups or communities, and they are put or entrusted with leadership roles during times of crisis and instability. So I've seen that happen a lot during my career, and then these roles that they are given are really come with really high risk, and it's kind of set to fail because there aren't many resources, many tools available to them, and it's extremely challenging. So you're kind of juggling maybe your family, your own personal priorities with a job that is sometimes becomes unmanageable, extremely stressful. And then, when these leaders fail, because, they are set for failure in a way. When these leaders fail, again, it is reiterating the stereotypes that, oh, X kind of people or X kind of community, they're not fit to become leaders. We knew that all along, but here's an example that I wanted to show you. So I think that, the glass cliff phenomena, again, I didn't know that there was a term for this as well, but I experienced this many a times in my career where you think it's because of your hard work and, the fuel that you put into your job and to your career to say, this is why you're getting the promotion or this is why you're getting the opportunity to grow and succeed, but actually you're not. These are times of crises where these managers huddle and come together and say, okay, who is the pawn today? And who is the person who is really, really ambitious, who is doing, maybe working 9 or 10 hours a day, while the others are working 5 or 6. So they really are very strategic in pointing those people out. Many a times racialized women who, come with a lot of dreams. We want to succeed. Our credentials are not recognized. Like I mentioned, as a journalist, I was, thrown to the wolves and said, you need to give this exam, you need to give this test. And I couldn't even afford it. I had 2 young kids. I had no childcare. And when I went for childcare, they said, oh, you need to have a job to get a, childcare space. So it's kind of a system that is, again and again, challenging you. How do you get childcare when you don't have a job? Where do you leave your kids with when you're going for an interview? And so when you're put into these leadership roles, you're so amazed, you're so happy. It's not the dollar, it's not the money that comes with it, but the recognition to say, finally, my hard work has been recognized. And really, when you get into the role, what sometimes sadly becomes or comes to happen is that while you are being exploited by those above you, you end up exploiting others, because there is no other way to succeed. And I just want to tell people or women here today and who may watch the recording later to say, first try and say no, because if you know that these opportunities are there to set you up for failure, there are many other opportunities that will come your way. But if you're not able to say no, then set the terms. So you have that good power to create the change, because now you have that role, the leadership role. So go back to your DEI policies, go back to your HR practices, and see what are the things that you can change within the parameters that you are in. I just want to mention that two places that I was really given that opportunity of a leadership role. One, where the organization's funding was totally taken away, the funding was frozen, and I was put in that hot seat and said, okay, now lead the way. And can you imagine imagine with no dollar employees, salaries, like how are you going to do it? So it took me months and months of, working around the clock to make funders believe that, we are an organization, we are stable, we are there to serve and, get the work done. The second time that I was, with a national health charity, I was given an amazing project, which I think even 10 people would not be able to do. It was totally like a very, very ambitious project, totally under-resourced. And I was given this on a platter and said, hey, you're promoted to X, Y, and Z, and here's your new project. And while I looked at it, I found that there was no way for me to do this project without getting volunteers involved and engaged. And as I did that, a few months down, I found that I'm exploiting these volunteers. They're putting in so much time and effort. And so in my capacity, I changed that to say that we need to pay volunteers. So it was the first time that, national organization had never paid volunteers. But I said, if you need for this to happen, if you need the project to be done, we need to pay an honorarium for every volunteer that kind of is supporting with the project. So I think that these are small but meaningful changes that you can make happen, with the glass cliff phenomena. And I just want to say that, with the glass cliff phenomena, what happens is these racialized women then get sidelined. So once the crisis is over, the women are taken off from their roles. In my case, the whole department was shut down. But I think that, they can take your role away from you, they can take your job away from you, but they can never take away that good things that you've done. I still have my volunteers who meet me and say, oh my God, like we loved, what we did. We made such a difference. And did things differently for us, which we have not seen. So I think those are the rewards as someone who has worked in this capacity, as a leader, as someone in the Canadian workplace. That's my reward as I retire. Those are the things that I will remember, and not the unmeaningful things that were done. But I think that as racialized women, we are in a different space we are today than maybe I was 20 years ago. So we need to advocate for ourselves. Nobody is going to advocate for us. So I just want to end with, you have that good power. Don't ever believe or make people, someone else tell you that, you can't do it. There are 9 reasons why you can do it, and we are all with you. CCMW is such an amazing organization. I've been with you all for 5 years, and there's so much good energy, so much positivity, so much of bonding. And, we can make things happen. We can make these systemic barriers and institutional barriers. If we can't eliminate them, I think we can reduce them to a great extent. So that's what I have to say. Thank you, Zara.
Thank you for those. And you did mention as one of the strategies in your answer there, looking at DEI initiatives at your company or in your organization. And Rubina, that is your specialty, that is your area of expertise. So I'm wondering if you could just add some insight on that in terms of how Muslim women can benefit from DEI initiatives within large companies, and what roles do you think DEI leaders can play fostering inclusion and religious and cultural diversity?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question. I was looking at Farida's question in the chat, which I won't get into answering because I feel we could probably do an entire conversation just on the state of DEI, and what's happening specifically with the outcome of the elections in the US and other parts of the world, just how that is changing and what's going to happen to DEI itself. But one thing I would say is that when it comes to DEI and what should be happening within companies, the accountability actually should be aligned with the leaders versus with the DEI teams. And I'm sure there are DEI leaders on here. I actually saw one of my previous colleagues on the call. I saw their name pop out, which was nice to see. But the direction of DEI can put in place policies and they can put in place programs, but the leaders in a company have to be held accountable. And so what I mean by that is, really them engaging in conversations around inclusion. What does that look like? What does a sense of belonging look like within their teams? How do they think about diversity beyond race and gender? Are they thinking about the broader scopes? Firdaus pointed out things like ageism, there's ableism, there's multi-generations, there's all these different types of things, right? And I think those are areas that our leaders have to really step into corporations. When it comes to your D&I teams, You know, I would just say at a very baseline, and I know even saying this, some on this call may go, well, obviously companies have things like accommodations for prayer or meditation or employee resource groups. There's still a lot of organizations out there that actually step back from it and say, we don't want to get involved in anything related to faith, or they say to people, oh, you need an accommodation for prayer, and give them like, oh, you can use, you know, a nursing room or something like that, right? Which is really doesn't work. And so I think at a baseline, companies need to have those in place. And what I would say for women on the call, or actually anyone on the call, say I think there are different genders on the call, that have those conversations with your DEI teams. And sometimes it could be even as simple, and technology allows it, to even include in like your corporate calendar, like a calendar of observances. The number of times I've had to push back because significant meetings have been scheduled on Eid. And then I'm told, well, you know, you don't need to be there. Well, if I'm not there, that's impacting my career. So you're basically saying to me, don't focus on your career. And so I'm the one that's losing out, right? So I think that's one of the things that DI can do. The other couple of points I would really want to point out is you know, for women on this call, Muslim women who are on this call, really the advocating for yourself, and I know Firdaus mentioned this as well, is so important, right? So there's something that you definitely can do, like raise your hand, take on stretch assignments. Don't always think about your career in a company and how you navigate it as, I want to be the next level leader, I want to be a director, I want to be a VP. Giving yourself visibility across the company that you work at is so important. And so things like saying, oh, you know, there's an assignment that I want to take on in a completely different part of the business, reaching out to a leader there, telling them why you're interested in it, be prepared for the conversation. Visibility is the most important thing, and that's helped me build my career. And I would say also, like, think about, I've always given this kind of tip even to my own team members. Make a list of individuals you want to meet in your company and talk to them. Just say, I want to set up like a 20-minute meet and greet. I know you're super busy. Go into the conversation, tell them about yourself, right? And that could really help you in terms of how to navigate the corporate world. I would say for a Muslim woman, who, you know, visibly is a Muslim woman, you could be, for example, let's just say a Muslim woman in a hijab. My conversations in the last month has been really interesting with the number of leaders who I've openly shared my journey, and I've offered to them and said, ask me questions if you want to ask me questions. You knew me when I wasn't wearing a hijab. I'm wearing a hijab now. Rather ask me questions. And they so appreciated that, because there was this, what do I say? What do I not say? How do I engage with a woman who's in hijab? And there's a lot of ignorance to that, right? And 100%, it is those individuals' responsibility to become educated. But if you're in a conversation with somebody and you offer that as, do you have any questions that you want to ask me about, you know, who I am or anything like that, it opens up a whole different conversation. It changes the way that kind of just mentoring conversation may be going as well. I would say for women on this call as well, the other thing to really, if your D&I teams or your HR teams or your company has mentor programs that they offer, it is so critical to engage in. My career literally got built through mentoring and sponsorships. I am still in touch with people who have been my advocate when I'm not in the room. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you one quick example. I was moving from South Africa back to North America and was relocating to Texas with Dell Computers. And the head of Dell in South Africa was on a business trip in Texas. And he said, hey, I'm going to meet with this woman who you're going to be working with. And the person, her name was Lisa, and he met with her. And she really thought it was him going to be talking to her about how amazing Rubina is. And, you know, you need to hire her. And she actually said to me, it felt like he was interviewing her as to whether or not she'd be a good enough leader for me. And to that in itself was a way of him sponsoring and advocating for me. So it's so important for you to have those individuals in your companies. And as you can tell, this is for like any woman, I would say, not only a Muslim woman, to advocate for you. So get involved in mentoring programs. If there aren't formal ones, reach out to people. And when you reach out to somebody and say, I'd like you to be my mentor, tell them why. I have people who reach out to me and say, please, I'd love you to be my mentor. And I'm like, okay, why do you want, like, help me out here. So I know how I can help you with that. I keep on saying lastly, but I will also, this is my last point, Zara, and then I'll kick it back to you, is that, as Muslim women, this is just another part of who we are. There is a privilege in understanding the diversity of who you are. So I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm an executive, I'm a racialized woman, I'm a daughter of freedom fighters. I'm all of these people. And, owning that in your company as to who you are, and then using that voice, right? Acknowledging that this is everything that I bring. When I walk into a meeting, I am bringing this diverse experience. I'm bringing thoughts that somebody may not have considered, and you're adding so much value. So I always say, use your voice. Work past that imposter syndrome. We all tend to have that imposter syndrome where we fear, oh my gosh, someone's gonna find out that I'm faking it. Well, fake it. And at the end of the day, you will own it. So I would just say, own who you are. Celebrate that. Take a few minutes today and think about what's all of the pieces that make up who you are, and all of that. I would say bring it up in your companies, in your meetings, have a conversations with your leaders, and celebrate those pieces as well.
Thank you so much, Rubina. I got so many takeaways from that, from the self-advocacy, finding mentorship so that you have support in that advocacy, being open and visible in ways that you maybe can shift the power, I think is really important, because I think it is hard. And Nobahar, I'm going to come to you for this question. Younger Canadian Muslim women, can often find like part-time or entry-level positions, but they really struggle with transitioning into full-time careers. So Nobahar, if you could kind of like add to that a little bit in terms of what steps can Muslim women take early on in their careers to improve chances of stable, permanent positions.
Yeah, of course. And this was a relevant finding from the study for me because I am a relatively recent graduate. So I did, I'm only at my second kind of full-time permanent position in my career. So it was a very relevant kind of stat from the study. One thing that I want to share right off the top that was a somewhat recent realization for me that I'm sure all of you already know here on the panel, the workplace is not a meritocracy. I think many of us get stuck in this trap of telling ourselves, I just need to work harder. I just need to put in more overtime. I just need more degrees. I need more unpaid work experience. I need more certifications. And then lo and behold, you put in all that work and still you see someone who is less qualified than you being given the promotion or being given the project. So that kind of proves to us that the workplace is not a meritocracy. So I think that's like a really important initial realization that we all need to have. At the same time, an impressive resume and a long list of accomplishments will get you through the door, I think, in many cases. But once you're actually in that interview, it becomes a lot less about what's on that paper and more about that human connection. So there is that kind of social aspect, and we know that, unfortunately, biases can come into play here. But ultimately, the work environment today is highly competitive. We know that the job market is highly competitive. You can bet that for every job you're applying to, there may be someone else who's applied who does have more work experience or who does have more degrees. So then it kind of becomes a matter of, okay, but how do I still differentiate myself? And to Rubiana's point, many of us have very diverse, experiences, and there are ways to sort of integrate that into how you're presenting yourself in a job interview or in a job application. So ultimately, you need to make yourself memorable. You need to stand out in that sea of candidates at a time when the job market just continues to be increasingly competitive. I think one way to do this is by developing your unique experiences or skills that show initiative. And this doesn't even need to be directly related to the field that you're working in. It could be something like starting a small business, learning a new language, pursuing a unique hobby like photography or cooking. These things can actually demonstrate to your employer that you can take an idea, you can see it through to execution. You're someone who's going to take initiative, and it also makes you memorable. It makes you stand out. I think in every single job interview I've had, I've somehow found a way to bring up that, hey, I love to like sew women's clothing. I would love to start a fashion business someday. And I've actually had people tell me like years later that that was something that they still remember about me from when they had that job interview. So you'd be surprised at what can kind of make you stand out. And equally important is kind of learning how to tell your unique story. And I know it might sound kind of silly, but you should kind of reflect on what your unique strengths and experiences are. Write it down. Or even just ask the people around you. You know, sometimes I struggle to see what I bring to the table, but go to your closest few friends or family members and ask them, like, what is it about me that you think would make me stand out as a candidate? What are the unique things I bring to the table? And you'll be very pleasantly surprised by the amazing things that the ones close to you kind of pick up on about what your unique strengths are. And then that way you can kind of start to tell that unique story. So you want to highlight how all your experiences, even those outside a traditional work setting, have helped you build transferable skills like problem solving, communication, leadership. Ultimately, it's all about showing your employer that you're more than a resume. You're someone who can make a very meaningful impact to their organization, and you'll be a worthwhile long-term investment for them. So hopefully that's a little bit of helpful advice. But I think circling back to my first point, I do think it's very important for us to realize as a group that the workplace is not a meritocracy. And so if you're finding yourself in that situation of you keep kind of doing the qualifications, putting in the extra hours at work, and you're still not getting anywhere, just remind yourself that it's not you, it's not a shortcoming on your part. Again, it is a kind of a systemic thing, and you have to be creative and find other ways to make yourself stand out.
Yes, thank you, Nobahar, for sharing those insights. I think those are very, very good suggestions. Asma, I'm going to come to you now because you are someone who is in a leadership position, in a leadership role. And as a first-generation Muslim South Asian woman in Canada, can you share some of your experiences being in that world and how you reached the role you're in today?
Sure, Zara. Thanks for that question. And I just wanted to add everything that Rubina and Novahar just said. Really,
You're
I
listening.
thought you were. Sorry, can you hear me? Is that
Mhm.
phone there? Okay, perfect. Just really resonated with me because I was like literally all those instances I could see in my career that Rabina and Novar spoke about. So I'll share a little bit about my own background. So I am first generation. I am Pakistani by origin and grew up in Dubai. I came to Canada for university and graduated with a double major in information technology and accounting. I started working at KPMG right out of university, and I spent about 3 years in the audit practice before I moved to the tax practice where I built my career. And very early on in my career at KPMG, I felt a little different. There weren't many Muslims at the firm at that time. There were zero hijabis. So I kind of stood out and I felt that. But I worked really hard and I progressed through the ranks. I remember being a senior accountant in tax, and one of the partners telling me one day that I'm a bit too quiet and reserved, and that people didn't really know me, and that I should be more outgoing like some of my other colleagues. And that was a little bit of a shock to me because I wasn't expecting that. I'm a pretty friendly person, but I come from a culture and a background where we're taught to be respectful to others. So that was being misinterpreted as me being reserved. But what I told myself was that I was going to stay true to myself, and that I would work hard, and that my hard work would speak for itself. And eventually that did happen. People who started working with me realized I was very good at my work, and a great team member. But I do want to speak to the point that Rubina raised, that you have to advocate for yourself, because sometimes when we are quiet and people have these misconceptions about us, they forget to see what valuable team members we could be. So I've realized over the years that advocating for yourself, whether if you're interested in the next promotion or the next level, how do you raise that with the manager you're working with? Like, I want to get to the next level. What do I need to do? How can you support me to getting to that? Those are really important conversations to have, because people can't read our minds. They don't know what we may be aspiring to. Some people may think we're happy what we're doing, and that's all that we want. And I think I'm guilty of doing that for a majority of my career. When I made, so I quickly progressed through the ranks at KPMG from a senior accountant to a manager and senior manager. once I made senior manager, Zara, I was happy. I was like, this is the pinnacle of my career. That's it. I've achieved it, and I was happy. I didn't even think about becoming a partner. Like, never even thought of bringing it up as a a consideration, because I simply didn't think that someone like myself would ever be considered for that role. So I just completely held myself back. But I really think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the best of planners, and he laid out career path for me, and that led me to leadership. And I started working with some really amazing partners who became my mentors and then my sponsors. So going back to Rabina's point, finding good mentors and sponsors is extremely important. I think that people also have to realize a sponsor is someone who's going to give you opportunities, and you need to find them. Your mentor can be your sponsor, but your mentor may not necessarily be your sponsor. Your mentor may just be giving you advice and guidance, and you'll have different mentors for different things. But a sponsor is vital. They'll open up those doors. They'll advocate for you in the room when you're not there. Fortunately for me, my mentor, a white male Italian man, you wouldn't think that would be possible, but he was also my sponsor, and one of my strongest allies at the firm. And he created opportunities for me because he saw in me the potential that I had. And he gave me an opportunity to lead a team that he was building from scratch. He asked me to join him, and I said absolutely. I helped build up a team, hire the people, develop processes, manage the team, and that was my calling. I realized that I was naturally a very good leader at leading people, and that's something he also saw. And it was about at this time that he asked me if I was interested in being a partner, and I instantly said no. Because I came with a lot of internal baggage as well, I would say, right? Because being a Muslim, I thought that as a hijabi, with me being a partner, actually be a possibility. I also have a daughter who has autism. She was diagnosed at a very young age. For me, my family was priority. I was not going to, sacrifice my family for a career that I could pursue at a later time. So for those reasons, I said no, because I just was very hesitant and unsure. And then imposter syndrome also came into effect, and I was like, they'll find out that I'm not good enough to be a partner. But he went out of the way to encourage me, support me, made me meet other women partners, very senior partners at the firm, and said, just speak to them because they want to speak to you. And those women took the time to speak to me and say they've heard so much about me, the work I'm doing. I'm already leading the team. They gave me the support, knowing that my family experiences and stuff, and they were just so supportive and helpful. And it took me speaking to all these people who didn't actually know me but have heard of me, and they've heard of me not only because of my work, but like Rubina also mentioned, I had put myself out there in the DEI space at our firm by leading the Muslim network, by leading another network called the Special Family and Friends Network, which I co-created when my daughter was diagnosed with autism. It was a support network for family members, friends, and allies of neurodivergent children. So I put myself out there in very, at different places at the firm to be more visible, because I was very passionate about these things. So people had heard about me, people knew I was doing really well. So everyone started telling me, look, you're already acting like a partner. Why don't you want to go for it? It took me hearing this from a whole bunch of people to actually tell myself, you know what? I actually have to start believing in myself, and that I can actually do this. And alhamdulillah, I finally did. I accepted, and I said, okay, I'm going to go through the process. It is a process. You have to go through a bunch of interviews before you actually make partner. But it all worked out, and alhamdulillah, when I actually did make partner, the announcement was sent out. I received so many messages from young Muslim women at the firm who said, we feel represented, we are so proud. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know that this was going to have an impact like that. So that blew me away, because I realized that it's so important to see women like ourselves in these positions, advocating for others. And now I go out of my way at the firm to try and mentor the younger generation, because I want them to know, don't be like myself. Don't wait years and years and for someone to push you into this position. Start advocating for yourself, and and if you work hard and you're good at this, and this is something you're passionate about, you should be aspiring to be a leader at whatever position you are at. So that is my career journey to partnership, and I hope everyone can take away a few lessons from what I've shared today.
Yes, thank you, Asma. I know I'm for sure taking away a lot from that. And I think, this has been a recurring theme throughout this discussion around finding sponsorship, mentorship, and advocacy and how important that is, because I do think a lot of us to a certain extent do go through that imposter syndrome, and it can be intimidating, even something like seeking out a sponsor or seeking out a mentor, even if there's someone you hold in that position. Actually bringing that conversation forward can be something that's quite daunting and intimidating. So I'm going to come to you, Rubina, with this next question. What are some strategies you could recommend for Muslim women who are seeking those type of allies and support and mentorship in the workplace?
Yeah. So, excuse me. Um, the one thing I would say when it comes to allies, right, is first think to yourself and ask the question, what and why what are you actually looking for? Are you looking for allies? Are you looking for community? Are you looking for someone to support you in some way, right? Because that could take you in different places. If you're looking for example, a sense of community, similar to what Asma was sharing, joining an employee resource group, that is amazing. If you don't have a Muslim employer resource group, chances are your company has a women's one, and that'll help you to kind of have a sense of community. From an ally perspective, one of the things I would say too is rather start thinking about what is it that you're trying to look for, and then what's the support you needed. So for example, right, at the end of the day, all the businesses that we work for, we can talk about D&I, we can talk about inclusion, all of this stuff. Many companies will go, okay, we're more interested in the bottom line. And while we know that there is some type of return on investment in D&I, they could just be like, we're not interested in this. So what's more important for you is to think about, how do you make an impact in your organization? Who are your people? Who's your work tribe? And then what do you need to do to get that support? So a couple of things. If you're thinking about support in terms of your career, you want to build your career, you want to focus on developing yourself. Maybe in the next 12 months, you want to see yourself getting a promotion. In the next 3 years, you want to take a job in a different country, whatever that is, right? You have to be very structured about this. So put it down. I would say very simply, sit down with yourself and say, okay, 12 months, 2 years, where do I want to be? Following that, really think about then, what are the things that you think in your own career journey that you actually have, and what are your gaps? And be very thoughtful around, everyone has gaps, right? It doesn't mean that it's a negative. It's actually great to actually say, these are the things I need to get after. Having open conversations with the person that you report to. So going to your leader and saying, I've put this together. I want to talk to you about it. I have this framework of where I'm trying to get to. How can you help me support that? So those are ways for you to get support in terms of building your career. If you're trying to find a mentor in your company, that tends to be easier than just finding somebody externally. So one of the things that you could do is, what is it that you're trying to look for a mentor for? So I remember very early on in my career, there would be somebody, I think there was a woman speaking at one of our conferences, a senior leader at the time, and I was just in awe of the way that she communicated. Like, I just thought, wow, she communicates in a way that she's just getting everyone's attention. How does she actually do this? And the more I was in meetings with her, I realized that's just the way she shows up. I just reached out to her and I said, I'd love for you to be a mentor for me, and I was specific. And I said, I have seen you in these meetings. What I really value is the way that, when you communicate, you get the attention of everyone. So I was telling her why I wanted her to be a mentor. I had said to her, and I always leave it open at the end too, I know you're super busy. So if you say no, I completely understand. You don't want the person to feel like some type of guilt of saying no. I also would say to the person, you know what, I'd love to meet with you once a month if possible. It could be 30 minutes of your time. And so all of those things makes it easier for someone else to say, yes, you're going in there with what you need. And so I think those are ways that you can then start getting more support in the company. And think about it broader. I've had, I think, Asma, you said you had your leader was an Italian, white man. I've had mentors are all races, all genders, and externally as well. I have many people who reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, we'd love to talk to you about our career. We'd love to get advice. I try my best to respond to them and at least have one conversation if I can, because we do have to kind of pay it forward. And then in terms of allies, where you're really thinking, I really want to connect with those individuals who I think will support me, that are more inclusive, that are more approachable. Pay attention to those leaders just in regular meetings who are just organically being vocal, who integrate concepts of inclusion into what they're saying. People who raise their hands and post all over the world, I'm an ally, I'm an ally. I'm not saying that they're no, they're not. But to me, that can be kind of performative, right? Like, why do you have to tell us you're an ally? Like, you should just be showing up that way. And so if you're looking for somebody who you think could support you as a racialized woman, as a woman wearing hijab, as, any of those things that makes up who you are, you will very quickly be able to find, I think, in your company, the few leaders. Unfortunately, there sometimes are fewer than more, that you can kind of go, that's a great leader that maybe I want to be part of that team, or you want to ask them questions, or different things like that. And then lastly, I would just say that, like, if you're not getting support, or you're feeling you need support because you've been faced with some type of a bias, some type of disrespect, you need to speak to somebody about that, right? Because that is just not on in most countries of the world. I think most people are dialing in from Canada today. And so that would need to be addressed. So definitely reach out to like your HR or your leader about that.
Mhm. Thank you. I think those were very insightful suggestions, Rubina. And I really appreciated the suggestion to be really intentional about it. But I think also a reality is in a lot of corporate workplaces that a lot of these relationships come from also informal connections. And I think it popped up in the chat around networking sessions. And I think a reality for a lot of Muslim women in a lot of corporate fields is that practices such as having like after work socials at bars and things like that is still something that's quite common. So Nobahar, I'm going to come to you to answer this if you can, because this can feel quite exclusionary to a lot of Muslim women. How can we navigate and counter some of these while still looking to build professional connections?
Yeah, and for context, I work at a smaller organization, so we unfortunately don't have as many built out ERGs or EDI initiatives within the organization, and we could probably have a whole separate conversation about the pros and cons of kind of working with like a smaller startup organization versus a larger corporation. But it kind of comes with the territory of working with like a smaller kind of startup fintech vibe. And I also work in sales, so double whammy. You'd be surprised, there's still a lot of business that apparently happens on the golf course and at the bar. So it's a very tricky one because on the one hand, there's that pressure to participate in activities that may feel uncomfortable just for the sake of building social currency at work. On the other hand, speaking up about the lack of inclusivity risks feeling alienated or even being seen as difficult from your peers. And of course, choosing not to participate at all, kind of what Rubiana was saying about, just not participating in a meeting because it's on Eid, well, then you're excluded from that important bonding time with colleagues or even your manager, which could impact your career growth in very tangible ways. So one thing that I found works well in practice is being the one to kind of take initiative and propose alternative social activities. So instead of simply saying like, hey, that doesn't work for me, just propose something else, like a team lunch or a trivia night or a volunteering event that you can do collectively as a group. It kind of shifts the narrative from simply raising the issue to also offering a solution, which I think is often better perceived, especially in smaller organizations. That said, it's very tricky. It requires, balancing that need to fit into workplace culture with the need to stay true to your values. I think in practice, it's about finding those small moments where you can gradually influence change without feeling like you're jeopardizing your professional relationships or your values. So it can be a tricky one, but hopefully, the solution of kind of just being the one to initiate alternative ideas can be a helpful exercise for those who may encounter these after work social at bar type situations, which can be less than ideal.
Thank you so much. And Firdaus, I want to come back to you because you actually had a very unique experience in one of your first job interviews. Could you share with us what that was and what you experienced?
Yes, Zara, I think I was dying for you to come and ask me that question. But I'm hearing such wonderful experiences, and I'm learning so much. But I just wanted to share that when we migrate from these so-called third world countries, the assumption is that the people that you are going to work for and work with will be more knowledgeable or as knowledgeable as you. And so I'm taking you back into time, maybe 25 to 30 years ago, and I applied for a law firm. I didn't know anybody there, and I kind of fought really hard. There was this notion in Canada at that time, I don't know if it's true today, to say that, it's important, it's not important what you know, but who you know. So, I kind of wanted to kind of fight that and say, no, I'm not going to kind of go with friends who have these jobs and who are telling me to go and apply. So I looked up a position, and it was a law firm. I said, let me go. I think it was a receptionist or some kind of job that new immigrants like myself applied for. And as I walked into the interview, I see a panel of white men, one woman, and the first question that even before I sit down, I was asked is, "Oh, so where is your sari and bindi?" And I was like, "What? I haven't worn a sari except for my own wedding." The second question I get asked was by the male who owned the law firm, and he said, "So how is it? I hear you're from India, and how is it to live among lions and snakes?" And I kind of was floored. I didn't know if it was I was imagining things or he was just trying to be funny. But it was a real question that was asked of me. And I looked at him and I said, my resume tells you that I'm a graduate from the University of Bombay or Mumbai. And I live in a city just like you do in Toronto. And we have high rise, and, we have everything that you have here. And I've never seen a lion or a snake except when I went to the zoo. So I don't understand your question. But so that's what I'm trying to say, that I hope that the world has changed, now as it was for me 30 years ago. So I went back and I absolutely had a great laugh. I shared this with my family and friends. And of course, you can imagine what happened to that interview and that job. But I really feel that, it was mentioned here that, we need to be learners, and we need to be, to go that extra mile sometimes. But I just want to say that as immigrants or as newcomers who are looking for jobs, we are conditioned to make things work, whether it's our marriage or whether it's our family, our workplace. We are conditioned to say, let's do everything that will make it happen. That it will succeed. And I want to tell women today here, racialized women, to say that we must learn to say no. That's something that is not taught to us. We must learn to walk away from things that are too much from us, too many or very high expectations. And like a panelist here said, learn to be yourself. Like, I was told you have a very thick Indian accent. You must color your hair. Don't wear a kurti. Like all these things that will make you a Canadian and will make you get the right job. And I flew in the wrong, the opposite direction. I did everything that I was told not to do. I would go to my son's class and the teacher would say, "Do you need a translator?" I'm like, why do you think I need a translator? Like, is it written on my face that I don't know English? So I would get floored by all these things. And, you have to rise above it. Like I played victim for a few years, and then I said, no, if I don't advocate for myself, if I don't speak for myself, and if I don't, in a good way, shame others to say, you can't think of me this way just because I'm racialized, I dress a particular way, I have an accent, don't make assumptions of me. So I had to really spell it out to them, to say that, you cannot do this, and take the ownership. So once we own who we are, I think then the rest comes easy. So I would say, own your identity, be proud of it. There's just one you. You're so unique, your experiences, your education, what you come with. Take pride in who you are. And I think the doors will open for you as they should.
Thank you, Firdaus. Yes, authenticity is so key. We've been so conditioned to code switch or have our professional persona be different from our personal, and you really need to start integrating both to really see the changes that we want to see in the employment field. So I'm very cognizant of the time. I know we could go on forever. I know I've learned so much being part of this conversation. But I'm going to ask one more final question of our panelists and hopefully squeeze in one or two questions from the audience. And that is, if there is just one key lesson you want people to take away from your career journey that you believe will benefit others listening today and looking to overcome challenges and succeed in the workplace, what would that be? And Asma, you're up on my screen right now, so I'm going to ask you first.
Sure. I have two very quick pieces of advice. I think first would be to seek out good mentors. I think that is an essential part of our career, no matter what stage you are, and you'll have different mentors for different stages. So make sure you're reaching out, and you'll be surprised. Like Rubina said, many people will be happy to be mentors once you explain why you're reaching out to them to be a mentor. And finally, just a general piece of advice that took me a long time to figure out for myself was, start believing in yourself and be your true authentic self. Firdaus is an example of she stood her ground and refused to change, and I just love that. So thank you for sharing that. But continue to be your true authentic self. Be proud of who you are, and don't change yourself to fit in. Stand firm in your truth, and let your Muslim identity be your strength, not something to hide. As Muslim women, we have much to contribute to this world, and together we can create a future where our voices, especially the ones that are often silenced, are heard.
Beautiful. Thank you, Asma. Rubina, what about you? What's one key takeaway you would like to share?
Yeah, and Asma, thanks for the last thing you said. That was just that was amazing. I think a little bit of what Bruto said. My advice would be definitely own yourself, own and be celebrate who you are, who we are, as women, as Muslim women. And then, what we've heard over and over on this call is advocate for yourself. And I know we're throwing out that word a lot. And for some of you, you might be sitting there and going, what does this even mean? Like, how should I do that? Where should I start? As I said, I'm not saying I'm the most, I'm an expertise in everything, but I've navigated my way through a lot of corporates, big and small. And so if anybody wants to reach out and just say, Rubina, how would you approach this? I'm welcome to kind of be that ear for you and help guide you if I can.
Offering that is very beautiful. Thank you so much, Rubina. So we'll make sure we include contacts when we distribute at the end of this session. And if I could come back to you, Nobahar, about one key takeaway you would like to share.
I feel like I'm going to sound like a parrot because I want to reiterate that many of us come from a lineage of strong individuals who have defied the odds to get where they are today. And we carry some of that same resilience within us. So don't shy away from speaking up for what you deserve, whether it's a promotion, a pay raise, or a new opportunity. We are all worthy of it. And your confidence in yourself will open up doors that you never thought were possible. And one quick thing that I want to add on as well, because I know this conversation has been focused on how we can kind of move forward in our careers. And I do want to make a point of saying that no career or no job opportunity is worth sacrificing your mental health or your physical health. I think Firdaus made a good point that many of us are hardwired to make it work regardless of the cost. So I want to, regardless of how appealing a job opportunity might look or how appealing that next kind of jump in the ladder might look, never let it be at the cost of your physical or mental well-being. So we need to make sure that we take care of ourselves and each other's in our community, and make sure that we're kind of prioritizing that over our career goals, because we only have one kind of life here, and then we want to make sure that we're giving our all to our family and friends and our communities, and not just making it all about work.
Thank you. And I think it's quite fitting that we end with you, Firdaus, our esteemed project manager on this as well. What's one key takeaway you'd like to share with the group?
Thank you, Zara. And I always give more than required. So I'll give you two takeaways. So one that worked for me is like really be a lifelong learner. So never say no to learning. You never know when that learning comes, to use. So always take those opportunities, whether they are given to you or not, grab them, ask for them. And the second I would say is, there was a Bollywood film, and I'm sorry, I'm just being very myself today, but it said me first, So I always say that, that there's nothing more important than you. If you're alive, if you're well, that's when everything will happen for your family, for your job. So I would say that, put yourself, your emotional and, your well-being first, learn to say no. And I just want to say, as I was, I just want to share something personal is I lost my mom a couple of days ago. And as I was thinking, should I take part in this panel? Should I not? I found my mom's stole, so her shawl, and I said, you know what, this is going to wrap me. So find that stole of yours, find that comfort when you're down, when you need to be, brought up, find that comfort. It's really going to help. And no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. I totally believe that. If people say you're not good enough, walk away. There are, many opportunities there for you, and fight for whatever you deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are very sorry for your loss. Thank you for still being here with us and giving us that reminder. That was really beautiful. So we are 5 minutes left in the session. Yes, may the soul of your dear mama be found in the comfort of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before we close, we got 5 more minutes. I think we could take maybe 1 or 2 questions, Zuleika, if you have any. If any have been posted, I'm not sure. But this would be the opportunity. We do still have about 6 minutes if there's anything pressing that you would like answered.
Yeah, so one of the questions was specifically about Walmart, but I'll rephrase it to say a lot of companies are rolling back their DEI policy. What do panelists have to say about that?
Maybe Rubina, or if anybody wants to
I'll take a quick stab at it. I think there's a lot to it because many companies are rethinking where they are from a D&I perspective, but there are also a lot of companies that are stepping in and saying we need to do more. I think for companies like Walmart, there's probably a lot more to it than just what the media is coming out with. So when companies say we're stepping back, I doubt very much that they're 100% not going to be focusing on inclusion. What they could be doing is not using some of the terminology as directly as they were. And I think someone mentioned this, integrating it right within their business practices. There's no way you can operate without focusing on how do people feel included, even if it is the straight heterosexual white man, how does he feel included in a company, and the trans Black woman, right? Like you can't get away from that. So there's a lot more into it. I'm not going to go down that path, but I would say it's probably a larger conversation. And I think Farida Mohammed posted it. Happy to, to have an offline with you about kind of where companies are going with D&I. Maybe it's another conversation CCMW could host at some point.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So I could ask the next question. So the next question is still related to DI, but reflecting on what point do we stop categorizing DI and integrate equity and inclusion as standard practice in policy and labor laws? I know it's a bit of a heavy question. So
I can just I think 100% whoever answered that, like, I mean, ideally all of us in the D&I space want to say our job should like eventually not exist. But I think one of the key things that any DEI team or strong HR function or people function or whatever that is doing is the integration of DEI within the practices of the company. That's exactly one of the key things. And I think Asma or Nubahar, one of you talked about the systemic, right, issues that exist. That's the way the systemic issues in a company get addressed, is by the integration piece.
Thank you so much for that. I don't know if the other panelists want to tackle that or if we could move on to the next question. I think we're good to move on. So one of the generic questions we got was, what is the best approach to ask someone to be our mentor or sponsor, and how do we find them?
I can take an attempt at this one. So for a mentor, I would say really look for someone that you perhaps personally identify with, who may be in the area of your practice in your organization, to seek out advice, and just reach out to them, send them an email, set up a 15-minute coffee chat or 30 minutes, and look for that. For a sponsor, I would say you should be very, precise about who you are looking for as a sponsor. They really have to be in your area of work, because they will only be able to give you opportunities as a sponsor if they're directly in your area of work. So be very strategic when trying to reach out for a sponsor. But again, a mentor can also be a sponsor, so please keep that in mind. But again, just reaching out. I reached out to many leaders over my career, and again, that was something I was encouraged to do by other leaders. Reach out to this leader, set up a coffee chat, and I was like, why would she make time for me? I'm no one, and but they did. That's what good leaders are known for. They make time for you, and they see themselves in your shoes, so they want to mentor you, they want to help you. So make sure you identify the right individuals, and then just reach out, and inshallah, you'll find the best person.
One thing I would just add to that is when you do eventually connect with the right person, it is about kind of nurturing that relationship. So you don't just want to have one conversation and leave it at that. You do need to make a concentrated effort to continually book those coffee chats, share things that you think they might be interested in, also offer up your time. It is a two-way relationship. It's not just about what you can get from them. There are also probably things that they can benefit from you. So you don't just want to be reaching out when you need something. And I would say in terms of really tactically when you're reaching out to people, if you don't already have LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn can be a great tool in just sending messages to people who you may not be directly connected with, you may have some mutual connections with. So that can be a great tool to actually do the message and the outreach if you don't have their email.
I just want to add that, sometimes you need to step out of your comfort zone. So, as a media person, I used to go to a lot of media related events. And then someone kind of told me there's a fundraiser that, you must attend with me. And I went with her. And there I heard the amazing Adina Niazi, the ED of Afghan Women's Organization, speak. And, just her quiet demeanor, the leadership in her inspired me so much. And I was doing a leadership program with Maytree. And out of the blue, I just approached her. I said, I want you to be my mentor. I had no connections with the social sector. I didn't know how it worked. And there I was, being guided by this amazing lady. And it kind of opened the doors for me for, working in the not-for-profit, having no experience whatsoever. So I would just say that, be inspired by someone, find your passion, go into places that really you are uncomfortable, maybe, and you will find someone who inspires you. And I think you will find your mentor right there.
Inshallah. Ameen. So we are at the end of our time today, unfortunately, but please do stay tuned. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question. Please feel free to get in touch with us by email and stay in contact for future events related to this study, including the conference. So look out for communications about that. Please also look out, everybody who attended or registered today, there will be a survey that goes out to participants, and your input to this survey is really instrumental in making sure we can continue to do this work and get funding for projects to continue to do this amazing work. And just to close off, I'm going to send it off to our dear President, Nina. But thank you all for attending today. It was a pleasure. We hope you found this insightful and helpful.
Thank you, Zara. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Many thanks to our panelists, Rubina Duarte, Asma Hassan, Noor Bahar Hasnain, Firdaus Ali, and Zahra Grant. Much appreciation to our CCMW team, including Suleya Hirsi, Iman Ahmed Noor, Amal Masri, Professor Sarah Shah, and of course our ED, Nushat Jaffrey. Thank you to the audience for making space in your day to spend time with us and learn from each other. To our speakers, I found it so interesting to hear your origin stories and your careers, your experiences with what keeps you going in life were so insightful. And I've always known that the one who keeps learning is the one that is wealthy and gifted. We need to believe in ourselves, support each other, and be each other's cheerleaders. As I was thinking about this study, of always thinking about work as a jihad. So in Islam, jihad actual meaning is a struggle for self-improvement. It's not usually what's talked about in the news, but we know that talking about employment barriers, we realize how important virtuous work is for all able-bodied people, and how lucky we are to be able to work if we find that fit, with the people, like we say, our tribe. If we find our tribe, if we find the people that help us feel like we're making a difference in life, then that is really the most wonderful part about work. I was looking and found this Arabic saying, and in English it goes like this: a tree falls in the direction it leans. Be mindful of where you're leaning in life. The choices we make shape our future. Lean towards growth, positivity, and success. Inshallah, for all of you, growth, positivity, and success. And hopefully we'll be together again soon. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with all of you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Guys, so much.
Salam, everyone.